It's Monday, November 7th, and this is now on HNN.
See the Capitol Police, and they said we have to come in to talk to you.
New at noon, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi describes the moment she learned about her husband's attack.
That's devastating. We were just seeing some people fly over.
We have new details in that deadly motorized glider crash on Oahu's North Shore. It's the final day before the midterm elections. We've got team coverage just ahead. These stories plus Powerball mania continues on the mainland. Wait till you hear how high the jackpot has climbed, coming up on This Is Now.
Good afternoon. Thanks for watching. This Is Now. You got Jonathan and Ashley right here in the HNN Digital Center. Want to take you live out to Capitol Hill. Right now, it is midterm election eve, and the sprint to the finish line is underway.
That's right. With the control of Congress on the line, the stakes could not be higher. Leading candidates and party heavy hitters took a last-minute campaign blitz in search of votes. Alice Barr has more from Washington.
One more push to the finish line. In critical states that will decide which party controls Congress, voters are fired up.
How are you feeling?
Excited, motivated. I think that it's time for a change.
A new NBC News poll showing Democrats have pulled even with Republicans on voter interest, with 73% from both parties saying they're eager to cast their ballots. Republicans had a 9-point enthusiasm advantage just a month ago. And with razor-thin contests from Georgia to Wisconsin and Nevada, it will all come down to turnout.
When your side isn't enthusiastic and you don't show up, you end up getting that kind of midterm thumping.
Democrats are on the defense in more states than expected, including New Hampshire and Colorado. They're fighting economic gloom, with that new NBC poll showing 8 in 10 Americans are dissatisfied with the economy. And candidates will need to outperform President Biden, whose approval rating sits in just the mid-40s.
This election isn't a referendum, it's a choice.
He was one of 3 presidents on the ground in all-important Pennsylvania over the weekend. Former President Obama joining the push for Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman.
If you vote, then we will keep this country moving forward.
While former President Trump made a pitch for the Republican Dr. Mehmet Oz.
We're going to take back America. We're going to take it back.
Mr. Trump teasing his own expected 2024 presidential bid, taking a swipe at a possible rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, while declaring himself the frontrunner.
There it is, Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%.
Fetterman and Oz dropping new campaign ads today as candidates in pivotal contests across the country deliver their closing arguments. Proof of the voter enthusiasm we've been talking about already. By this weekend, early voting turnout had surpassed the early voting numbers from the last midterm elections in 2018, with more than 40 million ballots now cast nationwide. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Our election 2022 team coverage continues now by tossing things over to our Casey Lund, who has an update on how voter turnout has really changed over the years.
Yeah, guys, let's break down the numbers here, starting with the first 3 election cycles, 2016, 2018, and 2020. Our voter turnout in 2016, 58.4%, 52.7% in 2018, and then another presidential election year, 2020, 69.6%. We talked to Colin Moore about why we saw such a spike in turnout that year.
And 2020 here was really an extraordinary election because there was so much attention about Donald Trump's re-election campaign. We were in the middle of COVID, and we switched to mail-in ballots. So you had this explosion of turnout. I mean, 69%. It's something we've almost never seen before.
I also wanted to know if the numbers that we saw during the primary election could give us any indication of what we might expect for the turnout this general election coming up on Tuesday. Now, during the primary, we saw just under 40%, a little over 800,000 registered voters. Those numbers weren't good, and you can see how many people mailed in their ballots versus those that still wanted to vote in person. I asked Colin Moore whether or not this was a good indicator about what we could see during the general election.
They do give you some indication, and for midterm elections like this, our general election turnout tends to be somewhere between about 12 and 16 percentage points higher. So it's going to be a little bit higher, but because this isn't a presidential year, you don't get as much of a boost going into that general election. And this has been really an extraordinarily quiet campaign season this year. So I don't expect a big boost this time. I think if we might be looking at voter turnout of somewhere around 52, 53%, which would be more or less the same turnout we got back in 2018, which was the last midterm.
One more thing to show you here. Historic voter turnout in the state of Hawaii since statehood in 1959, where we saw almost 90% voter turnout. As you go down the decades, you can see that starts to wane. But again, in 2020, we saw pretty high numbers. I talked to Colin Moore about if he thinks those trends are going to continue.
I always tell people this is one of the great mysteries of local politics, how we went from being a very high voter turnout state to a low voter turnout state, which is incredibly rare. Most states that are high turnout states stay high, low states stay low. We've gone through this uncomfortable transition into a low turnout state. And I think a lot of us were hopeful in 2020 that we'd really begin to reverse this. But now I'm not so sure. The numbers that we're seeing, that we saw in the primary and that we're seeing so far for the mail-in votes that have been cast, make me think we might be returning back to those relatively low turnout rates in the in the low to mid 50s.
And just one day out from Election Day, a reminder that you can still register and vote up until 7 p.m. tomorrow. You need to find a voter service center. All the information to do that is online at hawaiinewsnow.com. For now, we'll send things back to you guys.
Now, for a look at what we can expect nationally, we're joined by Nancy Cordish, Chief White House Correspondent for CBS News. Aloha, Nancy. Always good to see you. Now, let's first start with what are you seeing when it comes to early voting?
Early voting across the country, Ashley, they're smashing records. So far, at least 40 million people have voted early. When you compare it to, let's say, 2018, they've already surpassed those totals, and we're still one day away from Election Day. So it is becoming more popular. Obviously, almost everybody in Hawaii has been committed to early voting for quite some time, but it's gaining popularity around the country. And what we're seeing, no huge surprise, is that registered Democrats are voting in slightly larger numbers than registered Republicans. That's been the trend for some time. We also know that Republicans tend to turn out in larger numbers on Election Day. So the fact that Democrats have the edge right now doesn't mean that they'll necessarily have an edge everywhere once all the votes are counted.
Absolutely, and we know the control of Congress is up for grabs and Republicans are expected to win big. What would it mean for President Biden's agenda if Republicans take control of the House or the Senate or even both?
His agenda, frankly, Ashley, would grind to a halt. It would be very difficult for him to try to pass some of the legislation that he has been talking about in the final 2 years of this term. It would also mean that he would be deluged by investigations. Republicans have committed to investigating everything from his son's business dealings to the border crisis, to the way that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was handled, to even the origins of COVID. And so life's going to get a lot more difficult for this president if his party loses one or both houses of Congress. He's going to have to find areas of compromise with Republicans. But the challenge is that even on issues that both sides say they care about, like immigration reform, they have such different ideas about how to tackle it. Republicans want to focus on border security. Democrats want to focus on a pathway to citizenship. And so, the chances of them being able to meet in the middle on some of these really contentious issues is pretty slim.
Yeah, and it could be a while before we actually know who has control of Congress, right? It could be a long night for many states, especially if the races are too close to call. What do we expect there?
No question. And there are also states that take longer to count than others, and that doesn't mean that there's some kind of problem with the counting. It just means that in some states, for example, they don't allow early votes to be processed until Election Day. Pennsylvania, a big battleground state, is one example of that. So it could take a day or two to count all the votes. That doesn't mean that there's anything shady going on. It just means that all the votes need to be tallied before we can make any kind of a call in some of these very, very tough races. In Pennsylvania alone, you've got two big battleground races, one for the Senate, one in the governor's race, and that Senate race in Pennsylvania could determine whether Democrats hold on to the Senate. So you're right, it could take a couple of days. It could even, frankly, take a month if there's no winner who gets above 50% in Georgia, where Herschel Walker is running against the incumbent Raphael Warnock. If that happens, if neither one of them gets over 50%, that goes to a runoff election that takes place a month from now. So we may not know about the balance of power in the Senate until December.
Oh, the drama, right? And tomorrow could be a historic night for women candidates. Tell us about that.
Particularly when it comes to governor's races, Ashley. You know, right now there are 9 women serving as governors across the country, but that number has held steady for the past 15 years or so. 1/5 of states run by women. But this year, there are 25 women running for governor across the country. That is a record. And you've even got 5 states where you've got 2 or even 3 women running against each other. So we know in those 5 states there will be women governors at the end of the night. And it does appear that women are poised to make some pretty historic gains on that front.
All right, Nancy Cordish joining us this afternoon. Thank you for being with us, Nancy. Our viewers always love seeing you.
You're welcome, Ashley. Aloha.
Aloha.
And don't forget, Hawaii News Now is your source for election 2022 coverage. More updates coming up in just a bit here on This Is Now. And we're also extending our live stream today to bring you even more reports throughout the afternoon. So keep checking those H&N digital platforms all the way till 4 o'clock today. And just into our newsroom, new at noon, new reaction from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi regarding the attack on her husband.
I was sleeping in Washington, D.C. I had just gotten in the night before from San Francisco. And I hear the doorbell ring and think, it's 5 something. I look up, I see it's 5. They must be the wrong apartment. No, it rings again, and then bang, 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 bang on the door. So I run to the door, and I'm very scared. I see this Capitol Police, and they said, we have to come in to talk to you. And I'm thinking, my children, my grandchildren. I never thought it would be Paul, because, I knew he wouldn't be out and about, shall we say. And so they came in at that time. We didn't even know where he was.
New details in a deadly crash involving a motorized hang glider. We've confirmed that a 17-year-old from Texas was one of the 2 victims. The Visitor Aloha Society of Hawaii is helping his family, and he has not been identified. The other victim was the pilot, reportedly in his 50s or 60s. The teen was said to be taking a flight lesson Saturday morning over Kaena Point State Park. The company offering those flight lessons is called Paradise Hang Gliding. They said they had a perfect safety record dating back to their opening in 2002. The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board are investigating the crash.
Also new today, what's being called a revolt at China's largest iPhone factory. This is going to cause some delays if you're looking to purchase that new iPhone 14. It really has to do with those harsh COVID restrictions and lockdowns China has imposed. Janice Mackey-Frere reports from Beijing.
Tonight, chaos at the world's biggest iPhone factory. Video showing an exodus of workers this week from Foxconn, fleeing a COVID clampdown after an outbreak of cases there. One video showing people wearing hazmat suits being taken to quarantine, while others were seen tramping down highways with bags. This worker still at Foxconn telling NBC News they're confined to dormitories when they're not on shift. People are leaving every day, he says. After they left, the situation here got much worse, he says, describing more garbage, less food, and a lot of rumors. Apple did not respond to our request for comment, but with reports that iPhone production could be cut by 30%, Foxconn is giving big bonuses to lure workers back.
For Apple, any slump in production comes at a crucial time, just ahead of the busy year-end holiday season.
The viral scenes of escaping workers show the toll of the government's tough zero-COVID rules that affect nearly every American product made here, from toys to Teslas. And last week, 20,000 people were locked down inside Shanghai Disney over concerns a single COVID case had visited days before. Strict protocols have pushed business sentiment to a record low. A recent survey showing 57% of U.S. companies here are losing confidence in China investment because of zero COVID. With the government sticking to its approach, the 200,000 workers at Foxconn will remain in a sealed-off COVID bubble, while the city where the factory is located is now locking down too. Janice Mackey-Freyer, NBC News, Beijing.
Back out here live in the H&N Digital Center. Want to take a live look out over the state capitol. You can see some winds bouncing around there. A good time to remind you, H&N, again, is your source for all your election 2022 news. We have so much planned for you in the next 24 hours and beyond. But first, let's get a check of how that weather is going to be at those polling stations, or voter service centers, I should say. Here is Guy Hoggy.
We're not going to get a whole lot of rain today, just a few stray showers. But however, tonight, just in time for the lunar eclipse, there's a band of showers expected in. So the lunar eclipse starts at 11 and it runs all the way to 2 o'clock. The peak of the eclipse is right around 1. So it doesn't look that good if you're on the windward side. Remember, there's going to be clouds associated with this rain as well. The rain will be light, so it might be a little tricky seeing that eclipse tonight. And then after that, we're in for more normal trade wind conditions. A few passing showers, mainly for Wynwood and Mauka areas, mainly in the overnight and early morning hours. But overall, we're not expecting a lot of rain. It is going to be breezy, however, today and tomorrow. And then the other thing of note, with those breezy trade winds really ease up on Sunday. So that means on Sunday, it might be a little bit sticky. But until then, get ready for the best weather on the planet. It's a long run of that.
Thank you, Guy. Well, politics is not a topic a lot of adults like to talk about, and finding youth to engage can be even harder. But on the heels of Election Day, our Dylan and Cheta found some students quite passionate about the issues impacting their communities.
At Mililani High School, heated yet civil debates are a part of the class curriculum.
I love debating against my classmates because it gives me just another viewpoint that I never thought about.
Educator Jason Duncan teaches students about democracy, the functions of government, and impacts of politics. The debates are his way of making classroom lessons relevant to real-life topics without heavy divisiveness or anger.
We don't see that stuff in the classroom. I don't see that stuff in the classroom because we set the standard of civility. However, the kids just naturally do that themselves. You know, they're respectful of each other's opinions. They have a wide range of opinions.
Senior Jocelyn Rose recently turned 18 and is a first-time voter in this election.
We are very much affected by the policies that our representatives enact. And we can be very educated. There's a lot of different ways you can do self-research, but just from what we learn at school, it's very important, and every vote matters.
The students also learn about the impacts of special interest groups and achieving bipartisanship. Many of them support expanding political parties.
The current two-party system makes it very easy for people to become divided, and it makes politics seem black and white when there's actually a very large gray zone.
Over at Farrington High School, students not only learn about government, but also how to engage with it.
Government can't hear what you want it to do if you just stay silent. I mean, not just the youth, everyone should be encouraged to vote, and this is one way to get that started at an early age.
And teachers say while not every student may want to go into politics after high school, it's about the lessons they learn that can be applied to real life.
And I think that with knowledge there is power. And when they leave the course, you know, they will feel equipped with the tools and the knowledge necessary to make a difference.
It's important to not follow what others say and to form your own opinion, especially in today's world where you can be easily influenced by media. It is very important that you form your own educated opinion on the topics that you are looking into.
Dylan and Cheta, Hawaii News Now.
Why don't we take a look at what the internet is abuzz about today? And it's much the same as it's been for several days. Twitter. All right, here's what's going on. Latest news here. Kathy Griffin was kicked off Twitter after she impersonated Elon Musk, the new owner of the social media platform. Of course, Griffin was among the high-profile users who changed their names from their own on their verified accounts over the weekend to impersonate Musk. Others also did this. They include comedian Sarah Silverman and actress Valerie Bertinelli. They say they wanted to raise awareness about the potential flaws with the new plans for verified accounts. We've been talking about that a lot. Twitter plans to roll out charging $8 per month. So it's sort of like a subscription to get those little blue check marks.
Yeah, and anyone can buy them, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the scary thing, especially since us, like in the news media, count on those verified check marks to say if perchance you were dealing with a fire department or government agency, just to make sure they're posting the right thing. So it gets a little scary.
Yeah. Well, check this out. Watch a Chilean crime reporter become a victim of foul play from a suspect who's a definite flight risk. So during a live report about a rise in local robberies, a parrot landed on his shoulder. And the impromptu moment was cute, but the bird actually snatched his wireless ear pod and flew off, proving that local crime is a problem even higher than they thought. The bird eventually dropped the ear pod, but you gotta love live TV sometimes.
Wonder what the bird thought it was. Like, that's hilarious.
It looks, the ear pods are weird looking, so it could be like a bug.
Yeah, you could see that happening here at like Kapiolani Park with all the parrots flying around there. Yeah. All right. Everyone's talking about this Good News Now segment, and the Powerball jackpot still going, still climbing. $1.9 billion is what it's up to now. We got Sam Brock standing by in Florida with more on what's going down.
Tonight is officially the largest lottery jackpot ever at $1.9 billion with a lump sum payment of $929 million. You go into any convenience store across the country, you'll see signs like this advertising not just the drawing tonight, but also that massive number. And if it feels like there's been more billion-dollar jackpots in recent years, that's because there have been 5 to be exact, just since 2016. And there is a reason behind that. The biggest driver is the fact that they added number combinations a few years ago, which is to say that your odds of winning went down from 1 in 175 million, already not great, to 1 in almost 300 million. And so the longer you go without getting a jackpot, the more that money just builds. We are right now through 40 drawings. This will be the 41st for Powerball. That ties a record. There are certain numbers that come off regularly often, even though this is statistically random. The numbers 61 and 32 for the main drawing, and then for the Powerball, 24 and 18 are the most frequent. And there are also certain states that have won the most, and they happen to be in the Midwest. I am talking about Indiana, Missouri, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania are your top 4, although New York, California, and Florida, where I am, also in the double digits. So just things to keep in mind when you go and take your shot at $1.9 billion tonight. Sam Brock, NBC News.
And of course, we always miss out on the fun, at least of buying them in person, because you can't buy lotto here.
Did you call your parents or grandma?
Yes, I know they've bought tickets the last 3 rounds, so I need to remind them, hurry up. They probably only have a few hours left to do so.
Yeah, and remind us again how much one ticket is.
I think it's $2.
Okay.
It used to be 1, but I think they upped it to 2, and then there's all sorts of multipliers different bets you can place.
Yeah.
So. All right, good luck to anyone who got a ticket. That's it for This Is Now. Don't forget, we are going to continue our